Officer. No. Be sufficient on speakers to pick up the audience. Call the meeting to order. Everybody join me in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're gonna lead off. Holly, you said you've got a PowerPoint to.
Yes, thank you very much. So I'm very happy to be here tonight to present this second draft of the Harlan Township Strategic Plan. So since the first draft, we've done some continued work on talking with stakeholders. There were some interviews that we completed with the fire chief, the maintenance department. We also did another working session with our steering committee that we'll go into a little bit more depth in a few moments. And then last but not least, we received the economic development component to this plan. So we're going to dig a little deeper into that tonight. So based upon all this, we did make several revisions. And due to the timing tonight, I'm not going to go line by line of every change that we made, but we did provide a change log to the township. So if anybody wants to see the specific changes that were made, you can request that change log from the township, and it talks about what we did and where to find it on what page.
It might be helpful for us to post that. And so let's just make a note that we'd like Ashley to go ahead and post that change log so that there are no mysteries about what's occurred in the main body of the document.
Sounds good.
I need backup.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. All right. So as I mentioned, we do have this economic development plan added as chapter 4. I want to give kudos to Dana McDaniel and his team. I feel like this section really addressed a lot of what we were looking for as far as industry standards, metrics, and targeted uses for future economic development, prosperity in the township. So we're going to talk about that in just a few moments. Before we get into that, I wanted to touch on a couple other big ticket items that I call big ticket items that I talked in length with to the steering committee. First of all, we've talked about in the past about the country suburban and how we had some concerns with that from a planning standpoint. The steering committee also liked the distinct, connected, and rooted in the land. So I wanted to make sure it was clear that we did make that change in this plan. We do believe that as you evolve from an exurb today to a suburb, that it's not really what word we use or what label we put on you. It's more about who you are and what form and what quality and aesthetics you want to see as you build out your community. So that's why we think these words really help build you into a vibrant community going into the future, creating a framework to connect your past, to reflect on your present, and to shape the future for the aspirations of the community. Also, I wanted to respond to a couple of larger comments that we received regarding setbacks and density. First of all, with the setbacks, we received a number of concerns that the 200-foot setbacks were too large in the overlay districts and that we needed to reduce that back. And so prior to our last steering committee meeting, I did some research on some developments that have already been built out to see what the setbacks were and how they looked. And we were able to see along Clark State Road in Jefferson Township and along Highland Croy Road in Jerome Township that there are areas along all of those roads, pretty much the length of those roads, that are 200 feet in depth. And some places have significant tree lines, some don't. The ones that have the significant tree lines definitely look better. So we built in some language regarding making sure that the landscaping is there. If it's not there, if it is there, preserve it. If it's not there, build it up. Making sure that that is really driving home to that, because that landscaping makes the difference in the 200-foot setback. So based upon that, the steering committee recommended that we keep the 200 feet in the overlay district. So that is how it reads in this strategic plan draft at this point in time. The second thing that we discussed in length was density, gross versus net. Right now, the overlays include net developable acres. It is quite confusing the way it's defined, has some unintended consequences to it. I have found in my practice that gross density tends to be an industry standard. Understanding that other communities around here may not use gross density, but where I have worked in the past is that we have used it. And then also we utilized the communities that the resident or that the steering committee did field trips to. We thought, well, those are communities that we aspire to be, that the steering committee thought those are features that we like in those communities. So we reviewed their zoning codes and found that all but one of them uses gross density. So based upon that research, we are recommending, and the steering committee also is recommending, that the overlay district be changed to use gross density. The one thing that they would like to see, steering committee would like to see, is in the legislative PUDs, those are PUDs that are not overlays, that are here to, you know, a developer would have to bring in later and legislatively rezone their property to PUD, that those continue to utilize net developable acres, because those are some areas where there might be some clusters of increased density that make sense. And the net developable will help preserve some of the key features like floodplains and things like that, where we're trying to protect those and increase density adjacent to them so that we can protect those areas. But the committee agrees that the definition still needs to be evaluated and improved upon in the zoning code. So that is a recommendation in the plan. So just so that you understand that. And then
Question. In the
sure.
plan districts, net versus gross, is that something that can be determined through that legislative process? Or is it something that's dictated based on the kind of district they're attempting to create?
We could write it so that it is determined at the time of the rezoning, because really a PUD in and of itself is a developer coming in and writing their own zoning text. So they could define how they want to define.
And really, the township defines what they want.
Right.
It's really us saying, this is what we want.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that if it's undefined in your code for legislative PUDs of how you define the density, then you could, at the time they come in, say, our comp plan would like you to address it through net developable acres. But it's better if you have it in your code. Just to,
It's better if you have one or the other.
yeah, it is, just so that it's clear to them. It's not.
Is it assumed, and I don't want to get too far in the weeds here, is it assumed in the discussion that something like that is on the table for discussion?
Typically, a community defines that ahead of time. That's why
Okay.
I think it's better if you let the developer know ahead of time, this is the way we expect to calculate this, because they like predictability.
Okay. Can you imagine in your own mind language that leaves that door cracked?
I could get there, but I think it would have to be in a way that provides some certainty to both the community and to the developers.
Right. Okay. I'd just leave that box there.
Yep. All right. We also updated the future land use map, which I'm going to get to at the very end of this slideshow, but just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware that that's another major change that we did. So going into the economic development component, Dana's team starts off with why are we doing an economic development plan? To make sure that we understand that the community needs to maintain a stable tax base, that it helps preserve the financial health of the community, enhances the quality of life, builds resilience, and continues to leverage regional growth. And I think that's one thing that really is focused on in the economic part is how Harlem Township fits into that region's economic development arm. And then it goes on to talk about the comparison of strategies. And this is actually one of the comments that we received from draft one is how do we fit in and what are the roles of all the different entities? So I think Dana's team does a really nice job of describing who One Columbus is as the regional economic development arm. And then talking about Delaware County and what their role is. And then he uses New Albany as an example and as a metric. So when you first read it, you're like, why is New Albany in here? But when you really look at it, it's showing how New Albany fits into that funnel, and then how you just take that out and put Harlem in and put Harlem's goals and identity in and funnel that through that system. So I think he did a really nice job of setting that up. And then he does talk about the funnel, filter, and footprint. And this is where, you take out New Albany, you put Harlem Township in. And, Harlem Township will take its lead from the Delaware County, who's filtered through the One Columbus leads at a statewide level. And it talks about how as Harlem Township prepares for the future, they will use the strategic plan to really filter through work with the county to filter through those leads to identify the ones that make sense for Harlem Township, that fits the targeted uses, that fits the character of the community, that fits the strategic priorities of the community. So having this plan is extremely important to help make sure we're funneling the projects out that make sense for you. He also talks about schools, talking about making sure that you're partnering with them early in the process, aligning the curriculum with industry needs, and then identifying workforce pathways, and then helping to also facilitate create facility planning for the schools, help them understand what the enrollment growth is going to be and look at future school sites. And you'll see in our future land use plan, we've talked about future school sites and how we can help partner with that through some of the future land uses and land donations, potentially with development to accommodate the needs for the schools. Talks about brand marketing and branding, which I know you're already on, starting that with Cryo Communications, and how you can integrate your schools into that to help highlight your community as a place where families want to be because of the strong schools. And then integrating schools into your community, either, within your walkable mixed use areas by creating, we have in our future land use map, we have a future high school identified, but it also could be a satellite learning campus. It could be your career tech center putting a satellite campus out here. It could be Ohio State, or sometimes like OU has a Dublin campus. Maybe it's an OU Harlem Township campus, a Columbus State campus. There's all kinds of different avenues that you can take. And then integrating those into your mixed use areas brings traffic to those businesses that require walkability and brings success to that mixed use area. Then he talks about other partners being developers, commercial real estate professionals, and how public-private partnerships are really a positive for the community. We actually talked a lot about this at our steering committee meeting and concerns that residents might have if we're working with developers, transparency and how that works. And the steering committee The majority of that steering committee understands that we need public-private partnerships to move this township forward. The industry can provide us with an understanding of the market. They can help us understand company needs as they move forward. And then we as a township can provide zoning certainty, talking about predictability, pre-permitting where feasible. And what that means is exactly what you guys are already doing. Talking with surrounding communities regarding annexation to make sure we have annexation agreements and have all of those things lined up and in place so that when developers get here, they're not having to go through all of that process. They know they're going to be in Harlem Township. They know that there's a JED or an NCA or whatever is agreed upon between you and your partners. And they know what those taxes or development charges will be so they can build it into their pro forma. And they know then, does this make sense or does it not make sense? So that's key to that. Providing key infrastructure. And then assisting with incentives. And, you know, we talk about all the ABCs of economic development all throughout this plan. And I think that just goes for any economic development plan as a community moves forward. Then he gets into very specific recommendations. He recommends that the township establish at least 2 300-acre business campuses. And he provides a list of different types of uses to target based upon industry leads and what one Columbus is looking at for the Columbus region, as well as your surrounding communities, what exists there today and what would be support to them. He does not go into exactly where those 300-acre campuses should be, but he does say one should be along the southern tier and one should be along the eastern tier around 3762 in between there, which happens to align with the future land use map that we were already building with the steering committee. So I'm glad to see that those are aligned as we move forward. Then he talks about ready sites. That was another question that we got in the first draft of what does it mean to have a ready site? It means that you have your zoning in place. It means that the infrastructure and utilities are identified and how they're going to get there and be paid for. There are certain times that you can actually get the phase 1 environmentals done. There are programs through One Columbus that you can get grants to have that done. So if you have a specific targeted business park, you can get a grant to get that environmental review done so that when development is ready to come in, it's there. And then making sure legal and ownership readiness is there, regulatory approvals, and then marketing and positioning with community support. I think this plan helps that, right? So community support is being built through this process of identifying your priorities to making sure that when these industries are built out, they're aligning with the strategies that you've already identified and your priorities that you've already identified. And then that fits right into your marketing for the community. He also talks about service nodes being located along or adjacent to transportation corridors. And this would be where your neighborhood level retail service businesses are. This is one area I think that we need to have some further conversation on. We talked at the last trustee special meeting about doing some bubble concepts along 605 where service nodes could be, because I was kind of thinking along that line. And then when I went to the steering committee last month, we actually, we were doing more of like a charrette type meeting of where we thought things would go. And that helped us create our future land use map. And the committee was very, I wouldn't say they weren't supportive, but they didn't find the service nodes to be their priority. They felt like businesses should be targeted to the mixed use area, the Center Village area, or to the existing commercial areas along the borders. They felt like if we had nodes along 605, it would take away from the vibrancy of that village center. So, just a food for thought. So that's why those service nodes along 605 are not shown on your future land use map. That's coming out of the steering committee. And then Village Center, we've talked a lot about this. I don't think there's anything too new that we haven't really talked about. I do like how he uses the word work-life integration. I thought those were excellent words to build into this. He did provide an Appendix B for us regarding a mixture of uses. He based it on a 50-acre site, but noted that it could be scaled up. So a certain percentage to commercial, certain percentage to service, certain percentage to residential. And then that's based on 50 acres. And then as you grow up, you just multiply that out by percentage. And that's all in the appendix. And then that brings us to the future land use map. So again, this is a little bit more leaning towards more of a master plan, not necessarily where's your stormwater, where's your individual lots, but starting to identify where certain things could be located. So we do have, first of all, we started by identifying all the existing infrastructure on here as far as existing electric lines, proposed transmission lines. We did include things like existing agricultural businesses, horse and training facilities, and trees of 1 acre, tree stands of 1 acre or larger, just so that we could start seeing where pockets needed to be filled in. And then as a committee, last month, we just sat around with some markers and started to say, where does all of this make sense? And so we came up with the southwest corner of the township, which is the northeast corner of Harlem and Fancher Road, as being one of those business research and development areas. We talked about continuing to target that County Line Road as strategic industry. We didn't go as far as identifying where a campus would be, but just saying there's an overlay district that would support that and let that organically find itself within that overlay district. We talked about in the clustered conservation district, which surrounds, which is north of Fancher Road and surrounds the 300-acre business campus, that would still have the overlay of the clustered residential on it, but there could be pockets where increased density might be supported through a legislative PUD. So there's language in right around where that future land use map in the plan is. There's language talking about legislative PUDs may support increased density, especially if it's offsetting a lower density site where they're trying to preserve a critical resource area. So that if somebody would come in with a plan such as that, even though it doesn't show that density on the map, the plan supports it in the text. And then it also identifies some potential borders of a village center. Within the village center, it talks about a potential school site. It talks about additional parks, talks about some agritourism area and senior living areas just to the northeast of there, and how to build your residential walkability within those commercial areas. And then as you move out to the northwest in this purple area, really targeting that more for larger lots. And then we actually have what we're calling the agri community in that area. The committee identified the golf course as a site that may be redeveloped someday. Golf courses tend to be redeveloped the last several 10 years. Is it something that might happen? They identified that there are actually some ag easements surrounding the golf course, and that might be a potential area between the golf course and the ag easements to have some kind of agri community like Aberlin Springs, which is one of the field trips that the committee took. And we actually have some drawings in your draft plan of how you could cluster your housing and make that workable farm area within that same development. So targeting that here in the purple area. So really trying to think strategically where these uses are placed, but also understanding that we already have a framework around the borders, protecting the borders. So making sure that we understand that, and then within those borders, how to proactively plan for these future uses. So that's what I have.
Any public got any comments? Yes, sir. Please state your name.
Good evening. My name's Louis Greenwell. I live at 11665 Center Village Road. First, I'll say thanks to the trustees for publishing this and putting it out there for us. I know you guys just recently received this update, and it's in the interest of transparency, getting it out to all of us to see was thank you for that. My comments, I'll limit most of my comments to the economic development plan, since that's the newest part of the document. I think we can do better. I was left feeling a little bit like I wanted more. I think the economic part of the plan feels a little generic. It feels like that part of the plan could be applied to any township in Central Ohio, with the exception of mentioning Harlem Township by name a couple times in that section. There's really not a lot of mention of any of our strategic priorities or our strategic goals, or how the economic development plan solves those priorities and goals or meets those. I'll give two examples. And it could be that this detail is going to come later. And so maybe it's a later part of the plan, but I was hoping to see something that explained, like the alignments of the sewer to get from Smothers up to Fancher and up to Gorsuch, or to get over to 605, either one of those two alignments. I would like to see what's the cost of that, which I think the cost might be in there. But more importantly, what's the economic development that's needed to support that infrastructure? Is it, if we just used residential development, we would need 600 homes to pay for that development. If we use a mix of residential and some industrial, we would need this. If we are just only going on the industrial park or this business park that is being proposed, we could get by with this type of development. Kind of parallel to that, we need income tax to support that, the income tax with the financial mechanisms and levers. We need an income tax to support that. How many six-figure salaries would we need to make those, on average? What's a reasonable estimation of six-figure salaries that it would take to get that done? So some detail like that, so that residents and just lay people can understand what kind of development are we talking about to pay for this infrastructure. Second point I'll make is in the industry that's being proposed in and around for the business parks. The business parks, I think, are extremely important for us to get right out of the gate. It's our very first major development that's going to happen. Once the sewer gets up to that point, that's going to set the stage for a lot of the other development that happens in this township. We really need to be thoughtful about what that looks like. The industries that are proposed didn't feel like industries that align with Harlem Township. And I know you talked about the funnel. If what's at the top of the funnel is what we have to pick from, then what's at the bottom of that funnel is dictated by what's at the top. And so if at the top of that funnel is pharmaceutical, semiconductors, and that kind of stuff, that doesn't feel like the type of industry. Would have rather seen something like what you mentioned in some of the other areas, like some of the workforce development, a campus to train people in the trades, research and development for smart building materials. We know there's a housing need or housing shortage in Columbus. There's innovative ways now to do 3D printed housing with concrete or other innovative building materials. Why can't some of those materials be built here and installed in Columbus? You know, they have a huge shortage and they're looking for innovative ways. We could provide some of that workforce and some of the technology and innovative ways of research to solve those gaps. Adjacent to that could be makerspace, where you're teaching people how to do advanced woodworking or glass blowing, blacksmithing, coding for drones. You know, that type of industry and how it leads to, you know, maybe there's vertical farming. All types of research around that seems like a better fit for Harlem Township than pharmaceuticals, semiconductor, battery plant. That just doesn't feel like us. So I would just ask that we consider how we might align some of those other types of industries in that funnel so that we have a chance of mixing it up a little bit. And it's not just, it might be easy because there's a lot of those types of projects out there, a lot of developers looking to build those types of projects in Central Ohio. But I don't want to just settle for easy. Let's find some other developers that want to do some of these other things that maybe align more with maybe what our needs would be.
Yeah, I think those are all great ideas. A couple of things in response to that. I think probably we could go into more detail, ask Dana to go into more detail, but there is on page 37 a breakdown of what a 3,800 acre business park would generate as far as TIF value to help pay for sewer, water, roadways. It also has an income tax amount of what it would generate in 30 years based upon a partnership with Columbus and their 2.5% income tax. So it is a broad table or a high level table, but there are a number of lines on a spreadsheet that go behind that to explain that. So
yeah, and that table, I appreciate them including that. It'd be helpful to know since we're talking about increasing the density substantially across the entire township, how much more density is needed to get that number, or how does that density justify or satisfy those requirements? Like, why is it needed?
okay, I think that's something that we can easily build into there, so that's not a problem. As far as the types of industry, all great thoughts on all of those. I think probably what Dana was thinking was that we need something to kickstart or spark the economic development, and those are easy things to get. But it doesn't mean that we don't include this in there as follow-up stuff and to lead the community after we get it kickstarted. So 100% agree.
My last comment is on the net density versus gross, and I could be mistaken here, but what I want to know is what changed from the original authoring of I think you guys had a hand in authoring the original overlay districts, which included, not all, but some of them include net density. What's changed now versus what was appropriate?
I would
2 years
have,
ago?
I would have recommended gross back then. The zoning commission will probably still tell you they want net developable.
Okay.
I will still argue that I think we need gross.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think a couple comments, Louis. A strategic plan, I think, is high level with broad trajectories. And what you're after, I think, is more of a fiscal analysis that we would expect developers to come to us and say, because this is what they're going to have to do. Here are the number of jobs we think we're going to produce. Here are the economic development tools that we're going to utilize. And here's how we're going to pay for the infrastructure that's required. And then the township is going to have to do its own study and come back and say, well, here's our analysis. And then some negotiations will ensue. So I think that you're probably going to be a little frustrated until the rubber really starts meeting the road on some of these hard numbers. But both entities, both the township and developers, are going to be striving to define those. Nobody's going to pull a trigger until they can.
My request is not necessarily that detail or parcel specific. I was just hoping if the numbers live in a spreadsheet and they could be presented just as an example, like for example.
I think
I
that's
think
doable.
that's what needs to happen.
Yeah.
I think would be helpful.
How did
for
they-
people to wrap their heads around, what does it take to get there?
I think that would be great. We could provide an example, a case study
Yeah.
as
Just-
part of
just a
this.
fictitious benefit.
I think that'd be great. Yes. Yes.
There may be other examples in central Ohio townships that are.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Because I think for myself, one of the confusions is this is not a taxing entity. So all the discussion about salaries and wages and what gets taxed and, as far as I understand, Delaware County collects all the taxes and we're allocated something based upon real estate values, et cetera, or some share of that. So how do we, a model should show us, how do we move from where we are to something that is more comprehensive, more expansive in terms of who's getting taxed for what, and how does the county, who I'm assuming collects all of that, shares that with the township in a way that allows us to come up with the dollars for expanded roads, expanded infrastructure, other challenges that we'll probably face, including fire, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. So the income tax would actually be collected by the city of Columbus if it is a JED with the city of Columbus. If it's a JED with Village of Galena, it would, be collected by Village of Galena. So it all depends upon how those economic development agreements are set up. So I think the way this is explained in here is that we need a JED.
Yeah.
And we don't go into the details because we don't have those details yet. We're working on them, but they aren't ready to put in here yet.
To your second point, I think you're spot on. The township should determine the kinds of economic partners that we want to have. And they must be aligned with our cultural identity and our strategic priorities. And they can demonstrate that in any number of ways. But this is something that even like when you're talking to NACO, it's like, look, it's your municipality. You determine who comes into your municipality and hold your line there. And I think that's very important for us, even as a township, that we draw a line in the sand in that regard.
Steve?
Steve Eisenbrown, 4909 Harlem Road. So, well, I'm glad to see Dana delivered something. I would tend to agree with Louis that's pretty generic. I think it's a cut and paste from other projects, but that's the way this stuff usually goes till you start to build in the specifics of your own situation. We talk about JEDs and City of Columbus almost casually, and I don't think that's a casual conversation. And I know, John, you've had some discussions with them along with Holly in attendance. There's, sort of tossed out before the idea of a non-annexation agreement. As I remember the discussions a couple of months ago, we were waiting upon this economic development plan from Dana to form the basis of what Pete would put together to try to draw up a trial balloon agreement with Columbus. So I guess my question is, do you think this meets that need? I mean, do you think you've got enough now to have Pete put together a proposal that's got any meat to it that would be something that would then go to Columbus? I mean, do you see that still on the path?
So I talked to Brian Clark today, City of Columbus, and actually sent him this document.
Mm-hmm.
I also shared it with leadership in New Albany. And I think this is, they understand that a strategic plan is going to be broad, but when it comes to a JED and the percentages involved with a JED, it's not a difficult calculation. And Brian will say Columbus is not looking to make money. And they would be very open to a tri-part agreement between Columbus, New Albany, and Harlem Township. And I've floated that idea to New Albany, and they're open to a conversation. So I do believe that.
But John, there's no specifics. I mean, it's hard to even know if that's something that we want to do.
That's you walk down a path and you have a conversation and do a benefit risk analysis, all parties involved, and decide at some point, yeah, but right now, as of today, all parties think let's keep this conversation moving. We love what Harlem Township is doing. And I think that Adam can speak well to this because he's taken this a step further with Galena than we have down here in the South.
Yeah, but I guess my point is, do we have enough? Who's going to take the ball here to start drafting what an agreement would look like, what the elements of that would be, some of the, the financials that would be required. I think there might be a plus to have New Albany involved. It will certainly be a complicating addition versus a discussion just with Columbus. So can we get a sweeter deal for Harlem by involving New Albany, or should we just be sticking with Columbus? We don't have anything to even react to yet to say how much further should this go. So I'm really curious to see what the timeline is and what the next steps look like for that dialogue. I think Galena is much simpler. And I don't really, frankly, I mean, you can speak to that, Adam, but I'm much less concerned about that than dancing with the 800-pound gorilla. And so I'd like to know what's the next step then? If you think if you are having those conversations, what happens next, and who will be allowed to participate and witness those discussions?
So just in broad terms, Steve, right? Like when we talk about JEDs, I mean, that's income, that's revenue just to go into kind of general fund. When we talk about TIF, that money is really just for infrastructure development. So anytime we're entertaining the JED conversation with other municipalities, it really is, which one of our partners can give us the most benefit in these current situations. So if we find somebody that has, 150% the income tax that they can apply to the JED, we want to have that conversation. But I don't want to have that conversation if that person is going to say, we would like to keep, 95% of that income tax. Like we're not getting into these conversations to benefit Columbus, New Albany, Galena, anyone. This is pure self-interest driving these conversations. Like I'm trying to figure out something with Galena for Harlem's benefit. I know that John is doing the same when we look at the south side of the county or the township. And I think to your point though, a lot of the stuff has yet to be determined. I mean, we can do studies to determine potential TIF income. We can do studies to determine potential, even tax income if we get into a JED with somebody, but it's a lot of ifs. But I think one of the things you said is like, who takes the lead, who initiates the process, and in the process that we have been going through with Galena, like Holly has taken lead on that at our direction. When the mayor and council and I, we decide where we would like to go, and Holly and her team are great at drafting those agreements, what they might look like, sending them back and forth, doing some red penning. We haven't been to anywhere where there's anything yet for us to present here. And ultimately, regardless of what area of the township it is, any of these agreements, it's got to come to this table. It's got to get posted to the website. It's got to get full transparency before anybody goes into any kind of agreement. I think that's one thing this board will always die on is it's got to be crystal clear and everybody understands what we get into it. So I think we agree with you. Some of the things we haven't got checked off yet.
But I can tell you specifically, Steve, where we are today with these entities. Brian reached out to me today to get an update, and I said, your call is fortuitous because we just got the plan and shot it off to him. And the ball was in our court. That when we felt like we had a product that we could go back and have a discussion with Columbus, we'd reach out.
Right.
And so the ball remains in our court. Only now that we've begun this conversation with New Albany about infrastructure, it seems very logical to include all three entities in the ongoing conversation. And both Columbus and New Albany have intimated, yep, we agree. It's probably best for all three of us to continue the conversation. And so when I hear back from New Albany that, yep, we're interested in sitting down and talking, then I will reach out to Brian and say, hey, let's schedule a meeting. I think that meeting would be sometime during the month of October, I would hope. And the goal of that meeting is ultimately to produce a CETA agreement that includes a JED. And we talked to Brian today about non-annexation clauses. And we're all very upfront about, hey, this is what we want. And so far, those strategic priorities have aligned well. So that's where it is.
I don't know how you can say that because we haven't seen any of the structures of the agreement. So I mean, I take your word for it,
Yeah.
but we don't know any of the financials. We don't know any of the structures. So I don't know how you could say we align well.
So,
So-
and I think that's important that you asked who actually draws this up. Well, Pete does. And Pete has just finished doing this with Jersey and New Albany. And we would ask him to bring his expertise to the table, and he would be he's already been a part of these meetings.
Yeah.
And would continue to be a part of these meetings.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we're all just anxious to
Yeah,
to see
absolutely.
the meat and the
Nobody's
potatoes here,
more
right?
anxious than
And
us.
yeah, well, I know. I'm with you. I'm rooting for us. And is there a chicken and egg here with the sewer decisions?
So what's happening?
I mean, just to make this a simpler
yeah,
conversation,
I'm with
right?
you.
So we had a meeting, Holly and I went to a meeting a couple weeks ago with New Albany engineer, Delaware engineer, EMH&T, and ourselves. It was disappointing because the engineers had not done their homework. And so they were talking in hypotheticals, which was just not helpful. We can talk history and hypotheticals all day. And so they agreed that they would do their homework and that in our next meeting, which should occur in October, they would have concrete numbers. And what they're looking at is does it make sense to run affluent to the south down the Black Lick trunk, or does it make sense to run it west to the Big Walnut trunk? And it's to our benefit for them to consider running it west. If it comes down to 6 1/2 dozen in the other, which is a phrase that I heard in the meeting, then my appeal, which this is engineer talk, 6 1/2 dozen of the other. My appeal to Joe and Jennifer was, hey, I hope that when you make this decision that you will consider as part of your decisional matrix, the regional development of the township. And I think that they will. But that's where that is. And then the county, their opinion is it doesn't matter at this point what's happening on the southern tier. They're going to keep their planning process rolling for the southwest corner. And so they're exploring that line as it goes across to the east.
Well, because again, this is another one with, we've heard numbers that started out at about 15 million and got up to 85 million. It could be 120 in another 2 weeks, but we haven't seen any details. And I, for one, as a resident of Harlem Township, I don't want to pay a nickel for sewer, period. I don't want to run bonds or raise money. I don't think we should have to pay a nickel out of our pocket, incur any debt for this township to get a sewer line in, right? County made a deal back in 92. They built, just dug a big hole under the reservoir. Great. Delaware, bring us sewer, but not on our dime. And that's why I say, is it a chicken and the egg here to do some kind of a deal with a CETA Because then the back thinking is, oh, well, we'll get a CETA, we'll get revenue. And so we as Harlem Township can help pay for a sewer system. I don't want to pay for a sewer system. We didn't ask for a sewer system, right? So, so to me, there's a lot of moving pieces here, all of them ill-defined at this point. And now, thank you.
That's kind of what I'm wondering, because like what Steve said, the chicken or the egg, the sewer, the agreement with potential with New Albany, maybe Columbus. And we're talking CETA and whatnot. I mean, it's kind of happened together a little bit.
It does.
And I don't want this sewer, whatever happens, to take away from the capacity that Harlem is supposed to get.
Yes, this is an important point, and it's a point that we made in the meeting with EMH&T, is that whatever sewer is developed across the southern tier should not inhibit the ability of Harlem Township to grow out over the next 25 to 50 years.
Right.
That whatever line is constructed has to be of such width that it's able to handle the proposed capacity for the next few decades. And those at the table understand this is Harlem Township's priority.
The other thing to kind of follow up on with that, with what has been said, is that the term that continues to be utilized, I've heard Brian say it, and I've heard Dana say it, we say it all the time, pay as you grow. So the developers pay their way to develop. It's not something that the township would be incurring debt on. It would be the JED, the NCAs, the revenue that's generated from the development that would be paying for those extensions.
Yeah, that's a strategic priority. And that's why these economic partnerships are so important, because they give the township some muscles. And I think that our commitment is exactly, Steve, what you echo, that we do not want to burden our residents by having them pay for the next 30 years for this infrastructure.
Right. Amen.
Anything else? Yes, Steve.
Name is Steve Denz. I live on Ridgeview Drive, down off of Harlem in this southwest corner. A follow-up to something that was already said here. This pink section down here in the bottom left-hand corner, which is for, as I understand it, some kind of a business park. Okay. So I don't know what that does to the residents of the residential area there and what kind of a negative impact that's going to have. I noticed that in the write-up, there was a suggestion of, or a recommendation of 2 300-acre parks. Is this one of them?
So that is about 300 acres that you're looking at.
Okay, so is there a plan to propose one elsewhere in the
So
township?
the second one is targeted in this area here. But we did not identify the specific 300 acres because this already has an overlay on it that would allow those uses. So it would be organically created because it's already permitted by zoning.
So I guess my question or request would be this economic plan that will identify all these sources of revenue in terms of and expenditures like sewer, roads, maybe additional fire, all those things. It would be really helpful to understand the mechanics of that, to understand how important this business park is. Because the reality is what we're saying is we want to keep it rural, except there. And that, isn't going to sit well with everyone. And so the question is, do we really need it in order to meet somebody's desire Or is this a plan that they are used to providing to others they've done it in the past? And we think that the business piece is critical. Because if it's not critical, then it does, from my perspective, every meeting I've been to, I've not heard anybody say, we want a lot of business.
It is critical to getting the infrastructure in place. It's definitely necessary. The kind of detail that you are requesting goes back to Trustee Trainer's comment of fiscal analysis versus economic development analysis. And we are at a high level economic development analysis. Fiscal analysis would have to come later, and there are recommendations in the plan for a fiscal analysis. So that will come. As far as your thoughts on what that would look like, and how it would integrate with the residential areas, we are not recommending an overlay for that area. We're recommending that it go through the legislative PUD process, that there are significant standards on it to create a campus-like setting with large setbacks. And there are actually pictures of a research and development facility. And I was trying to find the page number so I could give it to you, in another community, in Granville. I'll just throw it out there. It's in Granville. And that's the kind of area that we're, and desire and look that we are trying to achieve in that area.
Okay.
So if you could look at Owens Corning in Granville, that's what we use as our model for that area.
So you're saying it's absolutely required. Is that because of the dollars and cents that are being driven by that piece of the pie?
To get the sewer across, it would need to have that economic engine to spark that.
Steve, a big part of it is because this board refuses to TIF the residents. We will only TIF new business.
Okay.
And TIF money is what's going to pay for the infrastructure that is coming regardless of how we act, right? So, those are the kind of options that you can put on this table. Earlier, I talked about TIFs, that they're purely to pay for the infrastructure for specific development.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we could put a residential TIF and pay for some sewer, but that means every person living in that area could have to pay for it. And to Steve Brown's point earlier, we do not want Harlem residents to have to pay for the sewer infrastructure. We want the growth that is coming with that sewer to pay for it. And so the only way to do that is with a commercial focused TIF. And the only way to make any money on that is to foster new business to take advantage of it. Does that make sense?
It does. And if I saw an economic model to understand all the parts and pieces in terms of existing real estate taxes, future real estate taxes based upon growth.
Well, understand this is not a conversation about real estate taxes for any resident.
But what you're saying is you need the commercial piece in order to generate the dollars to drive growth.
That's correct.
Okay.
And
so it's an integral, you're saying it's an integral part of this growth.
A portion of the property taxes that those developers would pay on that property would go to paying for the infrastructure growth.
Understood.
Is that right?
I understand. But my point is, we're introducing a sewer line that in theory should be paid for from the growth.
Correct.
That should resolve that, should take care of that. If it doesn't, then something's wrong.
Well, and I'll point to Dana's plan. I mean, obviously, these numbers are just kind of throwing stuff at a wall, but it's projected a 300-acre business park could generate $23 million plus in TIF revenue.
Okay.
And that would definitely take a considerable dent out of the infrastructure.
So the model would show who collects that and how it's used.
Well, the county would collect that, but the TIF agreement would determine how much of it is used for the infrastructure payment.
Yeah. So my only point is this all works, but it can't, what you're saying is it doesn't work just for modest rural to suburban growth of residents. You're saying it doesn't work. Okay. And all I'm saying is, so now you're picking a portion of the township and saying, whoever's there now, be prepared to lose your rural
No.
No,
And this is what's
no.
important is this is informed by conversations with the large landowners that already own this property and developers. And this is their intention.
Okay.
And I would not say that it's to lose your rural identity or character. Every decision that these trustees and the zoning commission make should go through the funnel of the priorities in here. So distinct, connected, rooted to the land. Just because it's a business park doesn't mean they can't have that character to them.
I understand that. All I'm saying is that whoever lives in that area, there's a big difference between having, 100 homes or 150 new homes there.
Go and
And what
visit.
that looks like versus a commercial enterprise or multiple commercial enterprises with folks coming and going, running businesses, et cetera, et cetera. That is not rural. That is not that's not what we have now.
Well, again, it goes back to my original conversation on the second slide of that we are ex-urban, township is ex-urban today, but you're not going to be ex-urban going into the future. So as you move forward, being able to retain the quality and the characteristic of the life that you enjoy today in a different style of setting is where we're trying to take this. I would highly recommend that you go look at Owens Corning on Route 16 in Granville. That it is set back, you would not even know it's there. It is a large industry with large paying jobs and supports that community.
Looks
And-
like a country club.
Yep,
Beautiful.
Understood. But it's not farmland. It's not,
well, it's not, no matter what we do, it's not going to be farmland there.
I get it. All I'm saying is there a way to not pick one group, one small area?
These are where the landowners what the landowners desire is.
I know, but it's not zoned for that now.
But this is a future land use map, as this isn't zoning.
I understand.
This is actually, what this represents, Steve, is it actually represents landowners that came to the township and are saying, this is what we want to do.
And that's great. And all I'm saying is, if I lived in a neighborhood and I came to you and I said, this is what I want to do with my 3-bedroom home.
Yeah.
And it's not it doesn't meet whatever the current standards are. You might say, that's great. Maybe you should sell it and go do that somewhere else.
Yeah, and that's
Yes.
why these, the relationship that's established between the township and landowners, and this really represents far more than 300 acres, is so important. And it's so important, as Adams said, I think, that we get this right the first time.
Mhm.
This is, or maybe it was Louis, this should be a model for how the township continues to develop. And so it's very important we do this well here.
Mhm. Understood.
And so they'll come and they'll say, here, this is what we want to do. And the township will say, yeah, but here are our parameters. And so out of that, I trust that we'll be aligned in our strategic goals and build a relationship that's long-term and beneficial to both entities. And they'll have to be compromised.
And I get there's a lot of give and take, and you
Yeah.
guys are in the middle a little bit here.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is, so you've got one landowner saying, this is what I want to do with this land that I've assembled. And you've got other landowners who say, this is the way I'd like it to remain, because that's what I paid for when I bought. And now you're going to change the zoning to meet somebody else's request. So it's just, two landowners or two types of landowners who don't want the same thing. And so the need or the desire to change it is in part driven by the need for the dollars necessary to do this larger plan, is what I'm hearing.
And I don't want to extend this too long.
Okay, I understand.
I don't think that the township will be making decisions based on a profit motive. we want to make decisions based upon the strategic priorities of the township. If a large group of landowners that represent 700 or 800 acres are present a fiscal plan and a design that is aligned with the township's priorities, then it would make sense to continue on in that relationship. And to do so in a way that is most helpful to contiguous landowners. Not everybody, it's going to be very difficult for everyone to say, I'm really happy about what's happening next door. But the goal would be that when it's completed, yeah, you are happy with what's next door. And the township has done due diligence and that developer has done due diligence. But
I understand. I understand that there's some give and take here. And I didn't mean to suggest that the township had some profit motive. But what I was trying to say is this kind of a development I'm hearing is necessary to generate the dollars that are necessary to pull off the larger.
this becomes an
Transaction,
economic engine.
right?
Yes, yes,
So this commercial stuff is critical, is what I'm hearing,
correct,
to making the whole thing work.
correct.
All right. And I'm simply saying that the rub is that the commercial piece is getting forced into one smaller area. And everybody who lives in and around that area is going to have a different life than they have now. And it will not look like the rest of the township.
It'll start in this corner and it will grow.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks, that's good.
Anything else? Mike?
I just want to say, and I'm not coming up in here as a resident right now, I'm coming up in here as the zoning guy that's taking all these phone calls. Just like Steve was talking about, there are a lot of people that have that same concern. And the first thing, and it's kind of cyclical because you can go through this in your head and follow what people are thinking. They're thinking, we're saying we got to put that in there. They're large landowners. Yes, they are entitled to try to do whatever they want on their property. I agree with that. I don't think anybody should be able to tell them they can't. But with that all being zoned what it is, what it was, they're looking to not next to an industrial park. And then we say, well, we need that money to drive so we can pay for the sewer. Well, what if we just don't pay for the sewer? Does it come? These are the questions I'm getting. This is not for me, but I'm trying to explain to you what the outlook on a lot of this stuff is. Say, okay, well, we don't get to pay for the sewer. What happens then? If the sewer doesn't come in, it's a logical following of their thinking. So they're saying, well, why do it? We want to keep it rural. Why just not volunteer to do anything to help them pay for that sewer? And they can keep that big hole down there on Smothers Road. So that's where the thinking is all coming from on this. And they're not here, and they probably will never be in this room. The ones that call and talk to me about these things, they call and talk to me over the phone, and I got to talk them off the cliff. But that's the way that the people are thinking about all these things. And I get it. You got to look at it how they're looking at it. You're saying, well, that's not you. Well, yes, but some of us are going to live right across the street from that and have to look at that. And I hope it's a beautiful thing. And I hope nobody, it probably will be based on our designs. Our zoning commission does a good job of controlling that, but we need to keep that in mind. And that's the concerns you're getting. And those people that are concerned about this, those are not the people that are in that guidance committee or her steering committee. And they're not the people that are making these decisions, but they are the people that are, and there are a lot of them out there that are very concerned about it. I just want to throw that out there to you.
Lindsay?
Let's come back to the little bit of education that is in the intro letter of this document.
Yep.
That maybe we could try to push out a little bit more, make it more visible. It's all about, there's like education in that intro letter talking about you can't put restrictions on what a landowner can do because then you could get into legal issues. Does this all come back to that?
Yeah, this is
Right.
exactly, Holly answered your question very well, Mike, in the introduction. And I would point people toward the introduction of this plan. And the beauty right now is that Harlem Township is having a discussion about how development's going to occur in the township. The ugly side of the coin is that we're out of the conversation and Columbus is imposing their own zoning, or New Albany is imposing their own zoning on the township because we failed to
retain our autonomy and we lost our zoning. And I think people need to come back to that as a starting point. And now we have to put on our big boy pants and do the hard work of guiding development. And that's a hard process. But the reality is that the township we would lose in a court battle. We would liquidate all of our assets and become a non-entity.
Absolutely, and I don't dispute that. I know all that because I've sat through the first half of this with
Yeah.
all of it before everything happened. But people out there aren't getting that point. Yeah, I get it because you've got it marked off perfectly there. If we don't do it, they can probably just walk down to Columbus and say, hey, I got 300 acres here that Harlem's not helping us with. But the problem is we keep saying to help pay for the sewer, to help pay for the sewer, to help pay for the sewer. And people are thinking, well, all you guys are concentrating on is helping to pay for that sewer to get development in here that we don't want anyway. That's where the thinking is going on that. And yes, you're right. I've talked them off the cliff and say, well, if we don't, they're just going to go down and talk to Columbus and get annexed. And then we're going to have Columbus in our bottom left hand.
Well, and that's,
But
Reframing that conversation
Yeah.
a little bit. I get it.
yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
that's
yes,
the whole
that would
problem,
help them a
because
lot, and help me a lot.
it's better for us to try to come up with a plan that's
Yes.
something that we can live with versus what Columbus is gonna do. How many units to the acre they're gonna put in, or
Exactly.
they wouldn't do a 200-foot setback or whatever.
No,
all that.
You're exactly right. And that's what I tell them. I said, look,
That's what we're
we
trying
either
to
have our
avoid.
zoning, which I think is good, or we can have 24 houses to an acre sitting right
Right,
next
yeah.
to us, 3 stories and 4 stories high.
Yeah.
And I do have a conversation with them, but I think that's where we're getting a lot of confusion about all this. And I don't know if we can put anything in
So-
there. That's a large conversation, but
We would like to see an economic engine developed in the southwest corner so that the sewer can be paid for, so that Harlem can control development.
there you go.
Steve,
So the choice of the southwest corner is driven by what?
The sewer.
Sure.
Right, but the
It's like-
sewer's going all the way across the south.
It's driving north a bit and then east.
they're going east,
So, but it's running across the southern portion of the town.
Yeah,
right?
So again, why the southwest corner?
because, well, that's where the Columbus trunk line is. And they ran it up Harlem and then east because they're trying to reach the first developable acreage in the township.
And landowners have assembled land in there over time, not just recently, over time with that expectation of development. And that's where the court battles will start. Or losing the land to adjacent communities if you don't provide the proper.
So
zoning.
those things were set in motion a long time ago. And now we find ourselves trying to respond to them the best that we can. And it seems that we're in a reasonable place right now.
Anything else, Steve?
Yeah, well, I think you've said it. I think the front end section of this is written pretty well. I think it's understandable. I need to go read it again one more time. But we don't necessarily need to distribute the whole document to the township, but it would seem like this is a good target for a flash email, right? To just get the opening section out there as sort of step one of the education process. And maybe next month, we'll send them chapter 2 or something to help walk them along a little bit. So go ahead.
The good news to everybody, the printed newsletter that comes out quarterly, should be coming to people's mailboxes any day now, because it's meant to come out before the October 7th candidates night.
Right.
And we usually have a section for economic development. Because this letter was put in this draft, we put that whole letter in the economic development section. So every household should get it in a printed copy within the next day or two.
Right. Good. Adam, you have anybody online?
No.
Okay. Anything else? Anything last, Molly?
How about next steps?
We should,
Yeah.
what's the process here?
So I think that we need to have a public meeting. And I think that that's our next step is to take this out and explain it and get feedback from the community. So I'm open to whatever time frame the board is wanting to meet.
So again, are you thinking Saturday at the church?
Saturday is fine with me.
18 or 25?
I think 18 would probably be
October
preferable.
29th.
I would need to do 18.
Say 10 a.m. on the 18th day,
Okay,
and I'll reach out to the church.
25 is backup. In the
Yeah.
morning.
Copy.
And then work with Lindsay to help get the word out. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The other steps here, it needs to be audited by MKSK. Do you anticipate that after that meeting?
I almost prefer to send it to them now to have them start reviewing it. And then that's because the 18th isn't that far away.
Mhm.
And then I can feed them any information, feedback that we get from the public.
Sounds good.
Okay.
You guys
sounds good.
good?
Anything else about them? Gentlemen,
No further business. Motion to adjourn 8:15.
second,
Second.
all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.